I'm coming in loud and clear. Might hear me on the radio. Breaker, breaker, 19. Anybody got their ears on?
Hey guys, it's Eric here at Farpoint Farms in the mountains of North Carolina. Today I'll be revisiting one of my earliest videos, and that is how to adjust the SWR on your antenna. If you're just getting into CB radio, or if you've been in it for years, you may not realize that no matter how low end or high end radio you buy, it's actually the antenna that helps you get heard and helps you get out. And it doesn't matter how tall or short that antenna is, if the SWR, standing wave ratio, isn't adjusted just right, you're actually probably just damaging your radio and you're not being heard. CB radios are limited to 4 watts on AM and 12 watts on sideband. That's not a lot of power. Standing wave ratio is the reflected power, the power that goes through this antenna. We want all 4 watts to go out and hear and be heard. But if you have a high SWR over a 2 to 1, well then that's a lot of that energy is then pushed back down into the radio, and it can damage what's called the finals on that radio. Especially if you used and you're talking quite a bit, those finals will get hot and they will fail. But on the bad side, you're only pushing maybe 2 watts out of a 4 watt radio. I'm going to show you how easy it is to adjust these. Some, if you're buying a brand new antenna, you might need to cut it. I don't know yet, we haven't played with this one. Some of them you're just going to make some minor up-down adjustments with the set screw and you'll be good to go. Now, antenna placement is also critical, but when it comes to aesthetics, some people don't want to have an antenna sticking right in the center of the roof. That's going to be the best location for an antenna, and I don't care if it's a 102 steel whip or a little teeny weeny President New Yorker, a little teeny short 18-inch antenna. Now, a 102 whip is not going to be ideal there. It's going to be ideal for getting out, but it's not going to be ideal. So a lot of cars, like this one here that I put in, that one there we decided to put on the rear bumper. It works, but as you can see here, I'm going to show you a picture of the patterns that we put out. Antenna placement and good grounding is as important as a lot of the other things we're going to discuss today. But back to what we're filming today, and that is the SWR adjustment. That's this raising and lowering this antenna. I've got it placed where I want it to be, and now we're going to get in here and we're going to see what our SWR is out of the box. This is a Cobra A1500. It's not a super large antenna. I believe it's only 32, maybe, yeah, 32 or 36 inches high. So certainly not one of the taller ones. They make ones that are 56 inches and of course the 102. But this one, if tuned properly, should perform quite well. And that's what we're hoping for. Let's do it. So as you can see, I've got my CB antenna mounted. Now there are different locations. Here's a picture of the locations you can put an antenna on your car, and you can see that centering it on the roof is actually ideal. But sometimes it's not the most aesthetically pleasing, or it gets in the way of having cabling go where you want it to go. In this case, I put it right at the back. There's only a few inches here of metal. This is actually plastic. A few inches of metal, but my antenna can go down through the hatch there. And so that is where I wanted to put mine. So once you have it installed in this place, you want to make sure that you have a good SWR reading. And so there are some adjustments. You can see on this one here, this is the antenna. It can be moved up or down to achieve the best possible SWR. Here is the adjustment tool. You loosen a little set screw here that allows you to move it up and down. So let's hop in the car. Now the radio I'm using has an SWR meter built in, but I'll show you how to check it with an analog meter as well. So here we are in the car, and what you're going to do is you are going to check your SWR reading on both channel 1 and on channel 40. So I'm just going to key down, and you can see my SWR is right at or below 2 on channel 1. Then I'm going to move up to 40, and we've got a problem. Okay, it's a little bit at 3 or over 3. So that means if it is higher on channel 40 than it is on channel 1, that means that antenna is too long. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to remove the antenna, and we're going to trim a little bit off of it. And what we're looking for is that we can get the SWR on channel 1 and channel 40 to be roughly the same. We want them to be just about equal. Let's go into the garage. I'm going to trim mine down. You don't want to go much, 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 inch at most. I'm going to go by 1/8 because you can always cut off more, but you can never put back on any. So let's do that and see if our SWR improves. All right, in my case, I used a Sawzall, but you could use a hacksaw. You could use a file if you wanted to get really in depth. And I actually do use a file to help round out the edges so it fits back down in the hole. So I've got it trimmed down, like fractionally, like that much. And we're gonna give it another shot. Now, one thing you want to keep in mind when adjusting SWR is you want all of your doors and windows and everything to be closed. You want the radio antenna to be set up exactly as it would when you're driving down the road, because having doors open are going to change the ground plane. The metal of your body acts as part of this antenna. So having your doors open or your tailgate hatch open, that's changing the pattern of the metal on your car. So that won't do you any good. When we close that up, you'll actually get very different readings. So once our windows are all rolled up and our doors are closed and everything is exactly as it would be when we were done, we can get in the car. Okay, channel 1. All right, we're still hanging, we're a little bit lower now. But we're still a little too high, a little bit lower, so we're getting there. We need to trim it down some more. And again, remember that we want to make sure not to cut too much off. So this process, I'm not going to film each and every time that I do this, but this process repeats until I have a low enough reading. I need it to be below 2 on 40. You can see, still too high. It drops down a little bit, but that's still too high. We're on channel 1. Channel 1, that's acceptable. That's 1.8 to 2. So I would prefer it a little lower, and we can get it a little lower. So let's do that. And then once we have that, we can do our fine tuning. You don't want to over tighten that, so right now we're just tightening it up so it's snug. And then once we have it just right, we can finish that. One thing to remember though, take that off when you are done tightening it up, because that'll actually act as part of the antenna and that will throw off your SWR readings as well. Okay, so here we are back in the car, and I'm gonna, what you haven't seen off camera is that I have adjusted this many times now. I've actually cut over 1 inch off of this. So 4 times back and forth to the shop to get the numbers that I wanted. And I think people overlook the fact that these CB antennas, sometimes you'll just hit the jackpot, you'll plug one in and it'll be reasonable. But without an SWR meter or a radio that has the ability to detect SWR, you're really taking a gamble, and you could damage a radio or just not get great reception and great transmitting capabilities out of it and think, oh, CB's dead, CB doesn't work, no one's on CB, when actually it just needs to be trimmed. So it took me 4 times of trimming a 1/4 inch off of this at a time for me to get the numbers I wanted. But as you can see here on channel 1, we're right down dead flat at 1 to 1. I mean, that is about the perfect setup you can have. On channel 40, we're between a 1.3 and a 1.5. That is perfect. And let's be honest, if we're using this on the road, and I'm going to be, most of the time this thing is going to be parked on channel 19. On channel 19, it's a 1.2, 1.3, somewhere around there. I'm very happy with that. So that's how easy it is to set it up properly. Now, what if I cut just a little bit too much? Well, the antenna itself has the ability to be up, lowered, and raised just a smidge, and you can tighten it down. As long as the set screw can grab hold of the antenna, it doesn't have to be bottomed out. So sometimes you might set one up, or you might buy one that's actually a little too short out of the box for your particular application. So you can raise that antenna up a little bit off of its base and tighten that set screw down. That's it, my friends. Now let me show you on a different car with an analog SWR meter hooked in, and so you can get an idea of adjusting those as well. I like the fact that a lot of radios now come with an SWR meter. I just don't know if I trust it as much as I would trusting a analog meter. So let me show you on another car what that looks like. All right, so here we are with a analog meter hooked up. This one's Radio Shack. I've had Micronauta, whatever the name Radio Shack used to use, but you come across these things used on eBay or flea markets, places like that, Hamfest, usually like $5 to $10. I picked this one up at a local flea market for $5. And it does more than just SWR. You can see it actually has power as one of its choices here too, so I can check if my radio is putting out full power. Now you will need one extra thing. You can see my antenna comes in here. I'm plugging it into this device, and then this goes through and measures its measurements. Then we have that wire that then you can't see it, but it goes actually to the radio. This unit is a wireless radio, so the actual radio is mounted underneath. And to set this thing up, and I'm probably gonna, well, that might work. Hopefully, yeah, you guys can see that. So in order to do this, I'm going to put it on, we'll put it on 1 for right now, and I'm going to key down. We're going to want to put it on calibrate, right? I'm going to key down. You can see the meter move. Right, well I want to make that, and usually this is a one-handed operation, but I want that to be at the calibrate. So I'm going to move the dial up a little bit more until it hits right at the line there, right at calibrate, right? Now when I move it down to the SWR switch, and you can see it barely moved at all, like it just barely twitched. See that? And that's beautiful. That's exactly what we want. So that is a 1.1. That is like the flattest you can get. Now if I move over to channel 40, we're going to go back up to calibrate again because it does change a little bit. It's pretty close. Okay. So we'll switch back over to SWR and we'll key down, and there you go, 1.3. 1.3. And if we look at this one, well, it's messing with the SWR on this because we have it plugged in. But I believe it was exactly 1.3. So that means that this SWR meter on this Cobra 75 is actually very accurate. But if you're ever curious about that, you certainly can double check it. Like I said, I trust these more than I trust especially the older ones. So you have your older models with analog meters built into the radio that'll have an SWR function. I just don't trust it. I don't trust it at all. This is a much better way of doing things. You know, you can read it right on the money there, you know. So I love that. Okay, so let's just say for the sake of it, since we'll give you a bonus here, I want to check power on this. You have average and PEP. Average is what it's going to put out. Let me get zoomed in on that. All right. And it looks like I am at 4, right on the money. So if I want to go to PEP, that's when you talk. It's called swing. Hello, hello, hello. And you can see it goes up all the way to 5 or 6 watts there. I guess that'll do it. Setting up your antenna properly is probably more important than getting an awesome radio. Like this Cobra right here, this is something that I recently picked up, and it's, you know, it's ultra compact or whatever. But I don't care if it's the smallest like this or the biggest like the you know, the fancy 29 or whatnot, or a unit in you know, Grant, an old school radio or whatever. I don't care what type of radio you're using. They all put out 4 watts. So the real magic happens in the antenna. If you buy an antenna off the shelf, and I don't care what antenna it is, but if you buy it, slap it on your roof and think you're going to be golden, you couldn't be more wrong. The antenna that I put on here was right out of the box, and it needed to have an entire inch cut off of it in order to make it perform as best as it can. I hope this helped. If you have any questions about SWR adjustment or radios in general, I'm the CB guy, or at least that's what the internet tells me. So feel free to leave a comment and I'll help you out. Take care.